Welcome to Eric Bunk's Vintage Sportsman. Hello, welcome to Eric Bunk's Vintage Sportsman. Today we're going to go in depth and show you how we build our blinds to make them more effective in the deer woods. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome to Eric Bunk's Vintage Sportsman. Today we're at our deer blind and we're going to show you how we make it more effective for a recurve shooter. This is something that I know all you experienced bow hunters know about already, but this is for the beginner or the novice, and just a couple tips to help you out. We have an area here. Do put bait out once in a while. Deer travel through here naturally too, but once in a while I use a little bit of bait to put out and things like that. But we have a good spot set up against a creek, and what we have here is some Christmas trees, and they're strategically placed because our deer come through this way, they come around behind us, they filter through a number of different ways. So I have a seat back there, you may be able to see it in the picture, which is 3 stakes just driven down into the ground with a little seat to lean up against, and it makes it a little easier. But if you notice here, I got a spot right through here, basically cut the way the trees are set, which I have a nice lane to shoot straight across. So if a deer comes in from this way, usually makes way in that way, or straight on, or they sometimes can come from this way. I have a clear shot out here, and I'm pretty much concealed because the top limb of my bow is where all the movement comes from. That is the area where I have the most difficulty, and I'd like to see the deer before they come in, so I try to make it so I can see. I position the trees just so I can see where the deer are coming from. If I can see that deer further down the path, I can get the bow into position, because 90% of your movement is getting the bow into position. Once I get that bow into position, then I can just draw straight back and release. I don't have to do all that movement. And that's what you really want to block. I'm not so much blocking me as I am blocking the movement. The movement is what the deer picks up. And that's your thing. I mean, if you could see that deer before they get there, that's huge. But we're a pretty thick area here, so sometimes it's difficult. So you really got to be on your toes, and you have to be able to look. And because everything here is vertical, you know, all your trees and brush are always vertical, you have to look for that horizontal line, or you see the flick of the tail. You'll see movement, even though it's thick. If you look real hard, you could pick out movement pretty easily. You know, but you have to concentrate. You can't fall asleep in your stand. We all do it. But you have to be really alert, and you will see those deer from quite a ways away, believe it or not. I mean, one time I saw a deer out in the swamp quite a ways, and it was rubbing its antlers on a sapling. So that pretty much told me, you know, I saw that movement, luckily, and I knew the deer was way off. Never came in, but it was a thing. But here's just the one angle anyway, just to show you the one angle of our blind. Now we'll go around to the side and show you what we see from the side. Now here, folks, is the side view of our blind. Now before we were set down, we were directly in front this way. Now we're sitting here, and we have our view was pretty much blocked here, but I can see straight out in the swamp this way. And what this does is I can see those deer if they're filtering this way. I could wait, and then when they get here, just to this point, I could have that bow, and that limb is covered right here. That limb of that bow, that movement, I'm all shielded. And I'm shielded this way, so if any of your deer behind there, coming behind the other deer, if there's more than one, I'm very much shielded. And if you look, when I shoot a bow, I cant the bow. So very important that I kind of cant the bow this way, and I have like just my branches trimmed just on an angle, so I can get that shot right through there. And if the deer happen to come from this way, not too good for if the deer come this way. They rarely come that way, but I try to make it as much as possible. You know, deer got to have a little chance to survive, but you know, it's but it works for me. It's a real good setup. I mean, these Christmas trees, they're biodegradable. The birds love these things. They run through these things and they peck in there and they hide in there. And at night we got pictures of raccoons running through here. So, it goes back into nature, and you're not polluting, and you're reusing a resource here. You're recycling in a sense. But I have another shot this way, and there's just so much cover in my movements that I can get away with enough that when these deer's eyes are sheltered. And another thing I like to do with these Christmas trees, if you are using any kind of bait or if you're around an apple tree, I'll take one of these Christmas trees and put it out in front of where the corn is, or apples, or if it's an apple tree, or whatever the deer are feeding on, or even if the deer are coming through natural. And I know the deer, I put scent down. Even if I put a little bit of scent and I'm not really doing anything with bait, when the deer puts its head down to smell that scent, this Christmas tree is covering its eyes. So if I'm sitting here and that deer puts his head down and there's a Christmas tree sitting there and the scent is behind that Christmas tree, well, his whole head is covered. That gives me a perfect clean shot at that deer. And that deer is unalerted and less likely to jump the string. I mean, deer they'll react to that sound, we all know, of the bowstring, and it could cause a perfectly, well-aimed arrow to strike in a little different location. An inch here, inch there makes a lot of difference, but it just lessens the chances. So it helps you out. And but this is a real good setup here. I like this. These Christmas trees are labor intensive, but in the end it's well worth it. And when these needles fall off, I've said this before, you take all kinds of leaves and brush from around, scoop up some leaves and just filter them through these branches when these needles fall off, and they'll still be quite thick. It'll still block the deer from seeing you quite a bit. So, there's our view from the side on this blind here. Now here's our view from our third side, and before I was sitting inside that blind there. And this is the deer come from behind you in some instances, and around behind me rarely, but deer can do whatever they want. But we have that creek as a barrier. We're hunting a long running barrier, which a lot of game loves those long running creek bottoms and barriers of those sorts. But here, when these deer come in, they don't see me down in there. And I could see them through here making their way around, and I could be ready for when they approach. But I just really have a thick barrier of brush that I set down in there. And it's really an art form to build a blind, just not a pile of brush. You have to have little areas where you can shoot out of and see out of, and you just want to make it a mishmash of a big brushy mess, so to speak. And the deer will get used to it. You just want to make it you want to be just a part of a big brush pile. And you get in the center of that, and it really will really help your hunting. And it's a lot of fun, fun to hunt from tree stands, but I just love my ground blinds. I like being on an eye level with the deer, but that's where you do, you just got to be a little innovative. Got to make your little spots where you got to be able to see out into the main woods so that you can eventually, see the deer before they come in, so you can be ready for the shot. So there's another perspective on our ground blind. Welcome back. Now we're going to take you up in the mountains to show you a natural pit blind we built and show you how that helps us get close to deer using Mother Nature's natural terrain. Stay tuned. Okay guys, this is a pit blind. I'm taking advantage of a natural hole that came out. I guess a tree had fallen, and this is where the root base used to be. So taking advantage, I'm guessing it fell this way, but I think there was a tree here at one time. If not, maybe just a natural indentation. I'm not quite sure. I don't really see a stump around here, so maybe that's not how it happened. But this tree happened to fall right in here, and there happens to be a flat rock right here. How great is that? And the stump, I guess somebody was cutting, so you right in here. And now I'm at ground level. So here I am. So my bow would be right about here. So if deer come off this hill, if deer come up this way, it's even better because I have all this brush here, part of this fallen log, which I stacked brush up, and this natural hemlock, this hemlock works great. Hemlock is just awesome for this. And actually hemlock, if you see, makes a nice little cover scent. If you take hemlock and you take this hemlock here and you rub it on your clothes, it produces an oil, and that oil has a good hemlock smell. And if you're in a hemlock woods, that's perfect. I don't really think you can cover human scent, but it helps just make you smell more like the woods, I guess. But I really don't believe you can cover human scent. I've used so-called cover scents that seem to work for me. I don't know why they work. I just don't believe you can cover human scent, but whatever it is, the scents that I use work. But I mean, anything you could do to help yourself out, keep your body clean, use that green soap, that scent-free soap, keep your clothes in a container, use stuff like this to make yourself, make your clothes smell natural. But this is just Mother Nature at work. You don't have to haul anything into the woods. All you need is those little mini pocket saws. And then here, I'm right at ground level. So deer doesn't see my human outline. I just look like a ball of twigs or just I don't look like anything to them. I just look like part of this craggy landscape here. So it's perfect. And that's why I love ground blinds, because this is just so natural. And I could sit here with the Recurve, and if I camouflage my limbs, and the main thing is seeing the deer before he gets here. So this way I can have the bow up and ready, and then my only motion would be drawn straight back. So let's demonstrate with a real bow and show you how I would do that. So stay tuned. Okay folks, here I am with my bow, and I know I need these limbs camouflaged. I don't like to paint my limbs and my precious Recurves, but what I do is I take camouflage makeup. I'll show you in another episode, and I camouflage these. But for the sake of being here, you get in, you get your arrow ready. Now here I am at ground level, and I'm ready to go. And I'm right at this ground level, which is perfect. And I cant the bow, and you got to watch your limbs. You see the limb is hitting this log, and you got to really watch your clearances. I've always said that. But if I know the deer coming down off this hill, I can sit, and then if I can see the deer way off, I get the bow right about here. Now that kills all that up and down motion. And the only thing I have to do is when that deer steps where it needs to be, and then let it fly. But here's my elbow hitting this. See, that's a mistake. That's why I have to make sure. That's why you always draw your bow. But if that would have been a deer coming, that may have messed up my hunt. But that's why you practice. But this is just a perfect setup. It just doesn't get any better than this. And it's nice because you can see kind of a long ways, and it's kind of open woods. But if you have this along a deer travel route, which this is, deer pass through here, but because this is a mountain, they tend to meander a bit. They don't follow an exact trail. They tend to follow areas rather than exact trails in some cases. I mean, there's sometimes they'll come off a main trail, and then they'll filter through these areas into thicker cover or wherever. But in this particular area, this happens to be one of those areas where they can come through in any direction. They often do, but it's just hit or miss. And it's a perfect horn rattling spot too. I mean, if you sit here and bang the horns together, you're covering a large area of the mountains. You're covering all this area, and it conceals your hand movement. When you're here rattling the horns, your hands aren't in an area where a deer can see them for way off. So that's another advantage. So you really have a great area here. I mean, this is just a perfect setup. So that's your tip, just wander the woods and use your woodsmanship skills. I mean, you don't have to have, people like to use tree stands, God bless them, but you don't need, you could get on the ground, especially with today's compound bows. They're so short, axle to axle. You could sit here with a compound bow or a crossbow if you want, and here you're ground level. And your scent may, I don't know if this is fact or not, but I would think my scent may kind of stay a little bit, as you're below the ground, kind of sink a little bit, and the wind is less likely to carry it up and away. I don't know that for sure, but there's things you could do. There was a guy, Fred Trost, I think he used to use a little smoke bomb back in the day. He put a little smoke bomb out just to test and see, how the wind would go. And, guys have all kinds of tricks. You get talcum powder and you can squeeze it in a little bottle or something, but I mean, this is just great. So I just wanted to give that tip. This is how I hunt, and this is a great way to hunt in your area. So check it out and give it a try sometime. Hello, welcome back. This is our practical sportsman section where we try to show you different ideas to make your life a little easier in the woods if you're on a budget like I am. This here actually is a tree seat I salvaged from a ladder stand, and what I did was I actually cut some pieces off of it, because this is all I really needed for a ground seat. And it kind of folds up. You can fold this down to a little bit more of a flat shape, and you can put it onto your backpack. And what I do is I just had it up, and I took right over here, if you can see a little bit closer here, is I took couple of eye hooks, and I took those eye hooks and I put them onto the sides there. Now what this does is it makes it a little easier, because what I do is I take a ratchet strap, and once I set it, I can ratchet strap that around the tree, and I can hold this in place, and this will go right up against the tree, and it'll be good. And this is just a nice little item, and it's not too heavy. It's not really that super big. And then when I'm done, I can fold it pretty much flat like that, and then there you go. You have one flat little deal here. So it's not too bad, and it's good. You can leave it in the woods if you want. You can lock it up to your tree, and you can leave it sit, because it's metal. You can leave it sit, give it a little camouflage paint, and you're set to go. And it's just a nice little seat. I've tried many different seats in my time, and I just can't seem to find one that I like. You know, I have a three-legged stool that I use and things, but this is just nice for certain situations. And you know, the fact of the matter is that it was free. I was able to salvage it from an old stand that was being thrown away, which makes it even better. And just those two Y hooks on the end, just bolted them in, and there you can put that right on your backpack, strap that on there, and you're ready to go. So that's just a good tip of the week for you, for a nice little homemade tree seat. And good luck out there, and good hunting. God bless. Hello, welcome back. Now we're working on a little bit of a tree seat here. I showed you before about our homemade tree seat made out of a ladder stand, and basically we just set it up against the tree. So if this was the tree I wanted to sit up against, we got nice soft mud. You could set that down in there, and then you would come around with a nice ratchet strap and ratchet strap it around the outside, and you can move this anywhere. Now here's a bonus. I have this big tree set in here. If I know the deer coming from my left, I have a bunch of thick brush over here, and this thick brush will guard me from being seen this way. I'll have this big tree this way, then I can go around, sneak, and pull and shoot this way. So we'll show you those two angles right about now. So here's that other angle I'm showing you. This big tree here is setting right in the way if those deer come out this way. So what we're doing, we have all this thick wall of brush here, and if you don't have time to make a blind, this is just perfect. It comes in handy for a nice little seat. And this is just a nice barrier in the way, and it really will make it a little easier for you. You know, if you're in an area where you don't have time to build a blind, you just want to be on the go and stalk a little bit and set, and you got your little tree seat and you're ready to go. And I'll show you the heavy brush behind us to show you how thick of a barrier that is. Now here's our little tree seat, and here's that thick brush barrier that goes for quite a ways. Then you have the large tree, then you have the area where the deer are going to come out, or sometimes come out of. And then you have a nice you're using Mother Nature to your advantage. You're using that thick brush, all those briars, to your advantage without having to do anything other than positioning your tree seat in the right location. And of course you have to watch the wind in every location, but you know, if the wind is right, you got yourself a good little setup. But I'm just using Mother Nature to my advantage here. I'm using her natural barriers to block me from being seen as much as possible, and that works real well. Okay folks, that's all for our show this week. Tune in again next time for another episode of Eric Bunk's Vintage Sportsman. Thanks for watching.